Welcome, everybody. We're recording from Kona, Hawaii with Linda, and today our book is One Mind by Larry Dossey.
So I was really inspired, actually, by Jewel, by you, when you wrote to me last week and said there are so many books out there to read, and that the book club has just helped you to kind of get a sense of whether you really want to read the book or not, right? So this is the reason that we kind of wanted to do this in the first place. Is over the years I've had a number of people say to me, I love the idea that you read all these different books, but I don't have time to do it. So she would, and this is one of our most highly trained veterinarians in Germany. She said just by being inspired by what I would say about some of these books, she would pull them up and read them. Mm-hmm. And so I don't know, I don't belong to any other book club, so I don't know what's usual. But what I like to do is go through these books on my Kindle. And the reason I use my iPad, actually, is because I can go through and underline. And I just pick what attracts me in a book. In this particular book, and the reason I love my iPad is that I underline everything. When I have so many books here, actually, it would be kind of interesting to let them see. We're just surrounded by books, and this is only one room that is full of books. And this is one of my collections here of the books that have been the most inspirational to me. There's another one at the door when you enter downstairs. These books down here are all my autism books. Wow. And and downstairs I have like the books, like 15 books that have really been instrumental in my life and in the work. Greg Braden's books, Bruce Lipton's books, Lynn McTaggart, a lot of just these little selections of books. So what I like to do, and those were the original books. How many of you read The Divine Matrix by Greg Braden?
Yes.
No. Yes. Well, with Greg's books, I usually read about a third. How many of you read only maybe a third or half of a book? Any of you?
I read part of it sometimes, and then I go back to finish it the rest time, and I underline and mark the margins and make a mess of the book.
and that's what I've done for years. And what I find, though, when I go back to read them, I'm stuck with what I underlined before. And what I love about the iPad, I can go through and underline in different colors, and then I just scroll down and see what interested me. But when I go back, I can wipe it all out, and I start the book again. So that's what I've been doing. Now, in this book by Larry Dossey, the reason that I wanted to choose it is about 4 or 5 years ago, I read his book, Reinventing Medicine. And one of the things that he wrote is, the mind is infinite, that my mind touches and is touched by everyone's, and all minds are linked. And when I read that, I thought, I wonder if he's also connected in the animal kingdom. Does he feel that is also true? And so in this book, I'm going to read to you the part where you see definitely, yes, he absolutely acknowledges all of them. So I'm simply going to go through, and I've chosen a few, all the way through the book, a few parts that attracted me on my third reading of this book. And in the beginning, when he has a lot of people writing about, this book, Aben Alexander, the author of Proof of Heaven, writes. How many of you read his book, Proof of Heaven?
I haven't read it all.
But and this is one book that I really feel is worth reading about the whole book. So what he writes, and I'm going to say the reason I think his book is important in the field is because he was very critical of Life After Life, and the original book that came out by oh my God, I've quoted him for so many. Who wrote Life After Life? Raymond Moody wrote it. Woody. And even Alexander said, it's just, that light at the end of the tunnel is caused by chemicals. Well, the reason I think it's an important book to read, because he is such an important voice in the medical world. When he was taken out by a virus and his brain was absolutely shut down, they kept him alive because of who he was, basically. He came back and he had something to write that completely changed his mind. And it's really worth reading. And he wrote, I've lived what Dr. Larry Dossey writes about. I know and can prove consciousness is non-local. I've used non-local knowing to make diagnoses and help make therapeutic decisions for my patients. I've learned to live by my experience and not by limited beliefs. And coming from him, like, this is, I think, a really important statement. And how did I get this? Lynn McTaggart writes, how many of you have read her books?
Yes.
Yes.
I have a question, Linda.
Yeah.
What is local and non-local?
This is a good question. He comes to it.
Oh, good.
He'll define it.
Okay.
So what Lynn McTaggart, who for me is one of the visionaries and pioneers for bringing us into this 21st century and understanding new science. She writes, this beautifully rendered masterwork from one of our most cherished sages of the spirit makes an eloquent and indisputable case for human consciousness as a singular entity. The sheer weight of mind-boggling evidence and compelling stories from near-death experience and reincarnation to creativity, ESP, and crowd intelligence demolishes the current mind equals brain theory of modern science and expands our perception of how the world works. One Mind is Dr. Larry Dossey's boldest and most majestic work to date, with a powerful lingering message. Nature has designed us to stay connected forever. And this is one of the reasons I read and reread this book, just to remember it, because lots of people write about it. But he, through this book, weaves the thoughts of so many people about it. Russell Tark. I want to quote him because he he was the director of Stanford Research Institute, and it's thanks to him that he was studying a group of 40 of us at Esalen in 1974, and we were in a workshop with out of the body. He'll come to me in a second. You'll all know his name. I can't believe that this is slipping. Anyway, he was studying us to see whether we were left or right brain influenced. And it's thanks to him that I got on this whole path of interest in how do we activate our logic and how do we stimulate and activate the creative, the feeling side, rather. So he writes, Russell Tark writes, Dr. Larry Dossey's strong and lucid new book, One Mind, presents convincing evidence for shared coherent consciousness of both humans and animals. Mental and physical experiences shared by friends, lovers, and identical twins separated by hundreds of thousands of miles. Very compelling reading. What's kind of personal and exciting for me, besides the fact that I was one of the 40 tested by Russell Tark, is that I also had the opportunity in 1985 to be in Russia, down in southern Russia, working with a psychologist and a group of Russians who once a month were connecting with ESP to Stanford Research Institute. And I was there the evening that they would have an envelope, and they would have to, just through what you see as a non-local mind, have a sense of what is in this closed envelope. And that's part of the research study that was going on with the Russians in 1985. So I have a lot of connection through this.
So Wouldn't that have to do with where he talks about the coyotes peering in his
It-
window?
I want to leave a feel for this. Sorry, it's just we're kind of I'm going through this because I really want to start now and go into his first chapter. I have to go like this because I've gone through and underlined all of this. So in the acknowledgments, second paragraph, as I wrote, coyotes began to visit. This was especially interesting as it often occurs while I was crafting this section about the connections between the minds of humans and animals. I would look up from my computer to see 1, 2, or 3 coyotes peering at me through the windows of my study. As they drilled holes in me with their gaze, I had the feeling they were curious about the manuscript and were making sure I got it right. And I read that. I was so excited because, 5 years ago, I read his other book and wondered this, and here he is. So he then talks about a bobcat that was doing the same thing and deer that would visit. So there's no question in my mind about this one mind. He goes on to write, in writing about the one mind, I felt that I'm a part of it, a part of that one mind. It has often seemed to me that my thoughts were not my own. They flow from an invisible company of informants, supporters, friends, and ancestors. The stereotype of the lonely, solitary writer struggling with his material does not apply. I have help. So to each of you and all in the Great Connect, thank you. How many of you read the original book by Rupert Sheldrake, The New Science of Mind? Anybody remember 30 years ago, the 100th monkey concept?
Yes.
I mean, it's kind of interesting because all of this goes back to that. And actually, he thanks Rupert Sheldrake because he connected with him when he was writing this book. And he acknowledges it here in the beginning. And then he goes on to say, author's note, about mind and consciousness. In the late 80s, I had the opportunity to lecture to physicians in New Delhi about the emerging evidence that mind and consciousness can be potent factors in health and illness. In the discussion that followed, an elderly Indian physician stood up and said very politely, Dr. Dossey, can you be more specific about what you mean by mind and consciousness? In my tradition, they're not the same. We have many levels of consciousness and states of mind. Now you will tell us which one you mean. I was out of my league and stammered my way through a pathetic non-answer. I love how, through this whole thing, there's no ego thing here that comes. So I just jump a few more pages. And the next chapter is, the title of this, it's just actually, we're still in the introduction. This book is about the concept of one mind, which evidence suggests is a collective, unitary domain of intelligence, of which all individual minds are a part. The one mind, with capital one and mind, is a dimension in which you and I meet, as we are doing even now. In the 20th century, we were introduced to several subdivisions of mind, such as the consciousness, the pre-conscious, the subconscious, the unconscious, the collective conscious, and the collective unconscious. The one mind is an additional perspective on our mental landscape. The difference is that the one mind is not a subdivision. It is the overarching, inclusive dimension to which all the mental components of all individual minds belong. I capitalize the one mind to distinguish it from the one mind that is possessed by each individual. I've written this book because I believe the one mind is a very powerful way out of the division, bitterness, selfishness, greed, and destruction that threatens to engulf our world, from which, beyond a certain point, there may be no escape. Identifying with the highest expressions of human consciousness can clear our vision, prevent the hardening of our moral and ethical arteries, and inspire us to action. These are not ordinary times. Boldness is required, including boldness in how we think about who we are, our origins and destiny, and what we are capable of. I do not consider the one mind as a philosophical plaything. It is not a luxury concept to be contemplated at leisure. Urgency is afoot. And for those of you who know my poem that came through in 1984 about Atlantis, this really fits what we've been talking about in this course. It is, times are afoot. We must pay attention to this if we want to find ways that each one of us can make a difference in the world. How this book works. I've constructed this book as a series of standalone bite-sized vignettes about the one mind, which what one reader called subway reading. There is a flow and a pattern to them, but each section also stands on its own as a portal or entry point, the concept of the one mind. Each deals with a particular way in which the one mind leaves its tracks in human affairs. I've directed this book to, I've directed this book to general readers, not to scientists, philosophers, or my peers and colleagues who are involved in consciousness research. It is intended for any layperson who retains the capacity to wonder, to marvel, as we all did as children before we learned that there is a proper way to think. Still, some sections are more complex than others. So if some sections are not your cup of tea, skip them. It's the big picture. I knew that. I thought that many of you would really enjoy this, and I just love his approach. All his books to me are like this, but this is particularly something. You may begin to notice in your own life that as you engage these various viewpoints, you may begin to notice patterns in your own life that seem more comprehensible and coherent from the one mind perspective. And of course, this is his whole idea for writing this, is to get us to think. If this happens, I'd love to hear from you. So I'd just like to ask, did any of you who read this, anything that come up for you? What came up for you? What did this book, how did it? Anybody want to share that?
I didn't get a chance to read it, so I can't share.
That's okay. I mean, that's why I'm reading through this. Because did anybody have a chance? This is why I like to go through, and then maybe it will speak to you, so you will find this useful to read. And that's why I'm trying to pick the parts that might give you information. Anybody have a chance to pick parts out that speak to you?
Yeah, I read at least some of the first 40, 50 pages, whatever I found on the Amazon, look inside.
Good work.
Yeah, it's a good way to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it gave expression to something I sensed, now I'm taking words from the book, but some unitary vision, some way that where all things are connected. And there is a consciousness. And, it's just been speculative on my part, but I felt there's something like that there. And so he's articulating that in his fashion. I don't know if I'd go do it exactly the way he did it, and I don't know if I'd want to make a case for one mind, but he's talking about something that he's articulating and discussing something that I think is going on, and it was very useful to hear that.
And for me, we're talking about the quantum field because it's all there.
Yeah.
And his comment that his statement in his other book that the mind is linked, that my mind touches and is touched by everyone's, and all minds are linked. When we recognize that, all we have to do is just, tapping through our theta brainwaves. If we have a question, this is how I brought this body of work through, is simply listening, and when somebody asks a question, open my mouth and hear what comes through from the field. And then it was years later that I had the validation, the scientific validation that we get more and more. Anybody else have any comments that they'd like to make?
And if you're muted, go ahead, just unmute yourself so that way everyone isn't unmuted at the
How do we
same
do it?
time. Just go to the bottom left of your screen and you can unmute yourself. Or raise your hand and I'll unmute you.
Sally, are you raising your hand?
What struck me in this book, I had a near-death experience and experienced that one-mind connection, and that was the most profound thing about that experience. But I hadn't read that, I've read other books about, like Rupert Sheldrake's Dogs Who Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home is a lot of the same information. But having it in this book with the near-death experiences was important for me, because I think that people who have been through something like that have really experienced that one mind moment. Or if you're in a really creative place and like you said, you get that inspiration, it's the same thing. But it's so validating to see that there's so many people that have experienced this.
Yeah.
And that when we give it a, like a concept, like Alan Schoen has done in this new book, the Compassionate Equestrian, it changes the perspective. Pretty interesting. So anybody else want to say something before I go on?
For me, there were experiences that there were just little things that happened that I didn't really realize were probably one-mind experiences until I read this and read that other people had had similar experiences. One of the things that clicked in the book was I was just driving one time, and for some reason the car in front of me veered off the road, and I veered off behind it for no reason. And my husband's going, "What are you doing?" And I said, "I don't know. It seemed like the thing to do." Well, there was a lady coming directly towards us in our lane. And, had I not followed that person in front of me off for no reason, we would have probably all of us been killed.
That's it, Jewel. And I think you should write to him as he asked. I think because this is written to us, the lay people, I think it would be really, really helpful. And also, Sally, just drop him a note. As a writer, it's so wonderful to get feedback.
And yeah, there were a number of things that came up as I was reading it, and I want to reread the book and then jot some things down. I also have a friend who has seen him speak, and for those of us if you've seen pictures of him, he really is attractive. He's a very pretty man.
And a very inspired and inspiring man.
Yes.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else would like to, because this is for all of us to share this opportunity.
Well, I really am enjoying the book. I'm probably halfway or a little more through it. Two thoughts. One is, while I find it very interesting, I'm sort of like, I can't imagine myself ever being able to access anything. And so I'm thinking, how is it that people do this? I just can't imagine that I could ever do that. So that was one thought. The second thought, which I don't know if it's related, but I do a lot of reading of books in the Buddhist tradition. And he had I don't remember what page it's on, but he talked about the concept of no self, which is very important in Buddhism, and how his idea of the one mind may be in conflict with it, but maybe not. And he didn't really come to a conclusion, but I found that to be very interesting.
Yes, and when you say that you can't imagine yourself experiencing that, this is what we feel one of the basic premises and results of these 1 1/4 circles of the Tellington T-Touch. Whenever you do it to yourself or apply it to another person or an animal or have it done to you, is an activation of both the left brain and the right brain and the whole brain. and developing these synapses so that you can start to access that part of the right brain that Jill Bolte Taylor in her TED Talks brought her to a place of compassion as a totally left brain person before her left brain was flooded in and completely out of commission because of a stroke that she had when she was 39 years old. How many of you have know Dr. Jill Bolte Taylor's book, My Stroke of Insight? Anybody here? It's a really important book, I feel.
And her TED Talk, yeah.
And her TED Talk, her 20-minute TED Talk is shape-shifting, actually, to watch it. I think it's really one of the most important 20 minutes you can spend to give you a sense of the value of experiencing that one mind, actually. She doesn't call it that, but it's that place of feeling all that is that we can get by accessing that. So keep practicing the circular touches on yourself and your animals and your friends, and this will activate that right brain besides the left.
You know, Linda, I think I remember in Amherst, Moshe asked a question, where is our mind?
Could easily be.
And he said, is it here? Well, if you take away my brain, are you saying you take away my mind? Why is it that no doctor and no scientist has exactly found the anatomical place of the mind? And then he talked about, well, could it be that it's everywhere, that it could be anywhere, and can it be between us? So that's, you know, that's
interesting. Isn't it? It'd be lovely if you could find, if he's ever, because that, of course, that's what this book is about.
Right.
And that's what he is discussing. And that's, you know, in Moshe's amazing creativity, not surprising that he would come up with this.
Mm-hmm.
So here we go. This is that kind of exactly what you're saying. We may experience the one mind in a variety of ways. Think of the one mind as a desert spring where we go to drink. We may arrive at the spring alone and have a solitary experience. Or we may meet another individual there, a group of individuals, or perhaps a throng. Just so, when we drink of the one mind, the experience may affect us singly and individually, manifesting as a transcendent moment, an epiphany, or a creative breakthrough. Or we may acquire information inexplicably, as if by revelation, or experience a premonition that proves valid. Alternately, one mind experiences may involve two or more people, such as when spouses, siblings, twins, lovers, or groups of individuals share emotions, thoughts, or feelings at a distance. As we'll see, they can also occur across species. Although one mind events are endlessly varied, they have this in common. They involve unbounded, extended awareness. But how can we be confident that the one mind exists? There are no meters or gadgets that can calibrate it. This problem applies to many things we believe are real but cannot be measured directly. Love, caring, compassion, patriotism, or a preference for peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, to name just a few. So one of the things somebody mentioned, you can go into Kindle and read a lot of this, and I think that's really helpful if you want to know, do you really want to go into this book deeper? I love that about this. So jumping ahead a little, what criteria should we set up to show that the one mind exists? How would interconnected, overlapping minds manifest in daily life? If individual minds are linked with all other minds via the one mind, what sort of experiences would individuals have? How would they know they're a part of the greater mind? If the one mind existed, we would expect to see the following. A person could share thoughts and emotions and even physical sensations with a distant individual with whom she has no sensory contact. An individual could demonstrate, and if you're thinking something that clicks as I say this and you want to make a comment,
remove your audio you're mute, so go ahead and say something.
An individual could demonstrate detailed knowledge possessed by a person who's died. And as, for instance, The Afterlife of Billy Fingers. Any of you read that? It's
Yep.
a really important book.
Yes.
Group of books. Distant communication could take place between humans and sentient non-humans, such as pets. Large groups of animals, herds, flocks, schools, could behave in such highly coordinated ways that shared overlapping minds are suggested. I'd say much more than suggested, yes?
Yeah.
And he talks about this much more later. A dying or even healthy individual could experience direct contact with a transcendent domain in which it is revealed to her that she is in fact part of a greater mind that is infinite in space and time. An individual could find hidden or lost objects through mental means alone, or perceive in detail without sensory contact distant scenes that are known to someone else. Jumping a little. We can also take some assurance from the number of creative geniuses in fields of endeavor as varied as theoretical physics, philosophy, and music, who over the centuries have expressed their belief in the one mind. And Rupert Sheldrake's studies, remember when he found that even among rats that were actually practicing through a very difficult maze in the UK, that they could just get it in another study that was being done in the United States.
Wow.
I remember. Anybody read that? Anybody remember those studies that Rupert Sheldrake did in years ago?
I think I saw a definite yes on Jewel, right? Yeah.
I loved it. I mean, he really gave us a lot of food for thought.
Jewel, did you say something?
Just that I remembered it.
So, law and local mind. The ultimate argument for the one mind, however, is the non-locality of consciousness, what you were just talking about with Moshe. We would explore the meaning of this term in the pages that follow, but briefly it is this. Individual minds turned out to be not just individual. They are not confined or localized to specific points in space, such as brains or bodies, nor to specific points in time, such as the present. Minds, rather, are non-local with respect to space and time. This means that the separateness of minds is an illusion, because individual minds cannot be put in a box or brain and walled off from one another. In some sense, all minds come together to form a single mind. Throughout history, many individuals, including eminent scientists, have glimpsed this fact. This includes Nobel physicist Erwin Schrödinger, who proclaimed, quote, "There is only one mind," and the distinguished physicist David Bohm, who asserted, "Deep down, the consciousness of mankind is one." And these two have been the visionaries in the new science. I coined the term non-local mind in 1989 in my book, Recovering the Soul, to express what I believe is a spatially and temporally infinite aspect of our consciousness. Non-local mind resembles the age-old concept of the soul, as we will see. Not a week goes by these days without some combustible congressman or febrile, depends who it is, right? Warning us that our nation is becoming second rate. Various reasons are cited, but a major one, we're told, is the educational system. We're falling behind in the hard sciences, and this imperils us in an increasingly competitive world. We're sternly warned that we must focus in our schools and universities before it is too late on the STEM areas: science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And he goes on. I want to keep jumping because you can. I want to go to another chapter. Before I do, any thoughts want to pop?
I have a question. When, he talks about one mind, would you consider, or would he consider, remote, or when people do healing over, remotely,
Yes.
Is that connecting?
Yes. And that's in the book.
Is that in there?
Yeah.
I didn't read the book.
Yep. No, but I mean, it's a really good question, and he covers so many aspects. As members of the One Mind, we continue to act individually, but as we become more aware of our communal selves, an alchemical process kicks in the form of heightened imagination and creativity.
Wow.
This is important because as we tap into that one mind, that's what we're able to do, is to tap in to that heightened imagination and creativity. We enter a field of knowing that is greater than that of any group member and greater than the sum of the group's members.
Wow.
And this is why our motto, changing the world one tea touch at a time, by changing ourselves and our perceptions to each other and our animals, is so profound because of this one mind. If we were all acting individually, what would it do? And now we have this amazing World Wide Web.
Yeah.
That connects us. I mean, the fact that we can be like this, who would we be without this Zoom? We'd all be sitting at home, maybe reading the book, but the fact that we're sharing it has a totally different effect on, we're sending this out into the field, this consideration of all of us taking the time to sit around and share this concept. Interesting.
Yeah. Oh, Jewel, yes.
No, just one thing that it struck me as I read the book too was that how long this has been talked about in human history, and how, we're still talking about it, and people might call it New Age. And I had somebody say to me one time, I said something about New Age. He said, New Age, Old Age, it's all the same. It's all been here forever. And are we, it's like how many scientists need to say this? How many philosophers need to say this? And, it's great that he's saying it. And, it's been done for so long, and we need to start paying attention.
Well, we are.
Yeah, we are.
No, I think, I feel like
Many people are.
I'm feeling like a lot of people
Yeah,
are.
I agree.
And it's just in other words. He chooses non-local because has nothing to do with religion. And
Right.
I didn't happen to find that, but that's one of the reasons he does. He quotes Einstein here. Einstein clearly saw that our very survival depends on a transition from the sense of the isolated self to an expanded level of awareness that includes all sentient beings. He said, quote, a human being is part of the whole, called by us a universe, a part limited in time and space. He experiences his thoughts and feelings as something separate from the rest, a kind of optical delusion of his consciousness. This delusion is a kind of prison for us. This is restricting us to our personal decisions and to the affection of a few persons nearest us. Our task must be to free ourselves from this prison by widening our circle of compassion to embrace all living creatures and the whole of nature in its beauty. Failure to do so risks global devastation. As Einstein wrote in a letter to President Truman in 1950, I do not know with what weapons World War III will be fought, but World War IV will be fought with sticks and stones.
Ha!
Yep.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So the thing is, this is a really good question. I think, Jewel, it's been said over and over, but we each, oh my gosh, don't we all, how many times have you heard the question, how come each generation doesn't learn from the one before?
That's true.
Because we must learn ourselves.
Wow.
And so these various visionaries, like Lynn McTaggart in her last book, well, in all her books, the Field, the Intention Experiment, The Bond, these to me are like really critical books to awaken people. And each one of us is awakened in a different way. So I'm just wondering, I'm going to pick a couple of, let me go through in this book. I want to go a little further.
Linda, and I'm wondering, did any part of the book stand out for anybody who did read some of it that you want to discuss?
I have dog ears all through the book.
Yeah, I've got a lot of marks in mine.
Yeah. So just pick one of those dog ears and trust that we're meant to hear it.
Well, one that's related to what you were just talking about is this sentence he has about highly creative people have overcome the dyschaotic, defractalizing, numbing effects of habits, ruts, and routines that have prevented their awakening to the transcendent one mind. And in the yoga and in Feldenkrais, you always teach people to like fold their hands one way and then notice which way and try it the other way. Like just doing small things like that really can change how a person's brain works. And it's so important to get yourself out of your ruts.
Yes, and to get out of the rut so that we can be more creative and get beyond our brain.
Right, into the one mind.
Wow. That's funny. Linda went like this and I went like that.
I was into the one mind.
Yes, yes.
So I have a question.
Yeah.
When you're faced with, and I'm going to use the medical community as my example, with a one mind that's apparently narrow-minded because they have studied, learned, practiced for many years, and this is their core belief. And now they deliver a message that's not exactly what you want to hear. How do you battle that one mind that they're delivering when you're just the individual?
Well, for me, I'll answer this personally. I would find somebody in the medical community who will give you another choice. For instance, I have told my husband, if something happens to me in a critical way, I will not be treated in the United States, even though I know many wonderful doctors, but not medically. I don't know them. And I would go to Mexico because I've had the experience of 2 friends with doctors in Mexico that have that bring in a whole other way of looking. Or if you can get a Chinese, a whole system from the Chinese system, my gosh, I mean, they think differently than we do. So it's if you can find somebody in the medical field who's into the new science and understands the possibility, like Dr. Joe Dispenza, or and can think out of the box. And I think the placebo effect.
Yes.
I mean,
well, I've read that book, and it's my Bible. I mean, I believe wholeheartedly everything he says, but I also feel like I'm fighting the army.
Well, and Eva, from what I see, the medical community is attempting to do this by creating functional medicine. So they're medical practitioners, they're MDs who don't want to be doing what they have been boxed in on, and so they've created another realm of functional medicine
or integrative.
Yes.
And they created from that functional, and you'll see they're really starting to weave it in.
Find one of those, and I'm sure you can actually Google them.
Oh yeah.
If you can't, I can give you the name of somebody who will.
Where do you live?
In Arizona.
You have Andrew Weil, and
yeah, he has the one in Tucson. Yeah.
But he also has a medical school.
And we actually have I several years ago made contact with that, and that is integrative medicine is the road that I'm going to pursue. Yay. But it's a road that the road is very bumpy and filled with obstacles that you really have to be very strong to be able to navigate through it.
You do. And Dr. Klinghardt, reads, I mean, amazing.
Who is it? Dr.
Klinghardt. I mean, just an amazing, working with Dr. Weil also.
I forgot.
He's amazing. So, and I think personally for what you're going through, having a support and asking for our support of you being strong enough to go through that, because it's really tough. I understand when you don't know where to go. But like I said, I'm headed for Mexico if I get something that I have to deal with, just because I've had the experience down there of such personal, such amazing compassion from doctors, and with two of my friends that had, just results that when they were told that there was absolutely no hope for them in the United States.
Yeah, but it is, I mean, the one mind theory certainly applies here. Right? It depends on what one mind you choose.
Well, you have to make a choose. You have to make a choice.
You have to make the choice, yes. And you have to be strong enough to stick with it.
Or pray. Get help. You don't have to be strong. I mean, when I say you don't have to be strong, to depend on it only yourself without...
Right, absolutely. You need a village.
Oh, yeah.
And I will get that.
Yeah. Sally, did you want to say something?
That I've worked with Bernie Siegel for a number of years, and he always says to look into yourself. Like, don't let a doctor tell you what's going on, because you know yourself, how you're doing and how one part of you is relating to another. And he has really great audio tapes that you can get online that are things like dealing with difficult times. And he has like a little guided meditation for you, and they apply to every situation. And they're so empowering because he helps you like work with yourself and not be a victim of the medical establishment. And that way you can be an advocate for yourself when you do have a doctor that has a strong opinion that's not what you want to hear or what you think is true. And I always remember Melissa Etheridge, after she had cancer, she was in an interview once and she said, I know I don't have cancer in every knowing way. And I was like, well, what does that mean? But she explained that in herself, she knew that no matter what anybody said, she was fine now, because the psychological and emotional factors and things in her life that had created that situation for her were all gone. They were all dealt with. They were all things that she had processed. And so she knew that she was fine no matter what anyone ever told her after that.
And I think because of all the wonderful experiences that he has personally led people through, and the success and his reputation, he would be a really great one, actually, to get his books and tapes. And especially,
write it down. Yeah.
Yeah. So this is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So this is interesting, because this book is, for me, this whole concept, I'm not sure it's a book that each one of you will necessarily follow here, because it may stimulate you to go to many of the other books. This is really, they're funny. And I'm trying to see what else.
Linda, could you speak about the one mind with animals, between animals and between us and animals, from your experience, something that strikes you?
Yes.
Which to pick?
Pull Rainey's picture off it. I want you to see, no, other way. Go that way. Go to your right on the wall. I want to bring you this picture.
Hey, Pooch.
This is Rainey, and she left the planet December 8th, like 2 Decembers ago. And she is as present with us now, I mean, all the time. And why this brings up the one mind for me is that shortly after she left, I read the book Glimpses of Eternity by Raymond Moody. Any of you read that book? The reason I bring it up, it is another level of what he started hearing from people at the deathbed, where caregivers, loved ones, nurses, doctors had the experience of going all the way to the tunnel with the person who was leaving. And what that brought me to think is, wait a minute, I've done quite a lot of work in soul retrieval and gone through to the park, through the other side. And what I'm getting is that through the one mind, we are, thanks to Raymond Moody's story, book, and also this book, the Afterlife of Billy Fingers, that with a really, really poignant introduction by Dr. Raymond Moody. What's happening, I believe the veil is opening, and that Rainey is coming back to me, and she comes back and forth. I mean, there are times when I feel her so strong here, and it's so interesting because last January we did a couples workshop here on the island, and Jack Zimmerman came to us for one evening. He lives here on the island, and his wife Jackie crossed over a couple of years ago, and he's actually conducting workshops where she comes in and actually meets with the group, just like Rainey is coming to me. And I believe this happens through the one mind, that just because you're out of the physical body does not change that possibility. And it all has to do with the quantum field and the fact that, did any of you read the books by Jane Roberts that were around Seth and Seth Speaks like 30 years ago?
Oh, yeah, I remember that one.
And The Education of Oversoul 7. Because it's a little book, she wrote it like a novel, and it's the Oversoul sits in a cloud, and he observes himself in the cave age, in the Middle Ages as a starving artist, in the present time as a woman just crossing over, and in the future. And the reason that's such, I think, it's actually a useful book, because it gives us this concept of the fact that there is not the past, present, and future. It's all one time.
Oh.
And it really gives you a sense of that sense of a concept, a theory that seems to be impossible, but she makes it really easy to get. And I think that's all part of the one mind, the present, past, and the future. It's all one. And for me, I say that, and then at the same time, it's a really big gift for us to be in this time, me experiencing this in my human body, not needing to be somewhere else at this time. I've done all that stuff, but it's a huge gift. And for us to be conscious of the fact, just of the one mind, and the fact that we can connect and communicate in this way, in this beautiful way. And that even though there are just a few of us here, that through the one mind, we're actually connecting in ways beyond that we cannot even imagine. And that means that every thought we have, every feeling, every emotion, every belief, as Greg Braden says in The Spontaneous Healing of Belief, actually affects the quantum field, which is the one mind. So it means that instead of sitting here alone, being frustrated, thinking that, oh, well, I'm just one individual, because of the one mind, we all are connected, and we can support each other in the realizations that we're coming to the fact that each person is special, not special, precious, and that we're out here supporting each other in that, and that gives me a real reason for giving gratitude, expressing gratitude every single day. And looking for ways to forgive myself, to forgive anything that happens to me. That's part for me. And this whole concept, which is the basis of our philosophy, our T-Touch philosophy, of practicing, choosing, not simple, but practicing seeing that half empty glass as half full, and finding ways of counting our blessings in this way. So I count you all as a blessing in my life, and that we get to meet this way, and this amazing being for being willing to do this with us and share. Anybody have any thoughts? I would like us to just give thanks and send thanks that we have this possibility of being out together in this way.
Just thank you. This has been very interesting.
Loved every minute of it, and loved the Dr. Shonen one too. That was so amazing.
Wow.
Can we talk about that one next time?
Yes, if any of you want to hear that, by the way, it's up on various of our Facebooks. You can. It's on
Trans-species field.
It's on the Tellington T-Touch World. We did a 30-minute approximately Skype or a Zoom session yesterday with Dr. Alan Schoen, who was, because he and I were talking about the activation of oxytocin from the Tellington T-Touch, and then the discussion of the new science discovery of fascia. And what he was saying is, and the concept of the liquid crystalline collagen in the body, connection through the body, is another, a level of understanding. And so we did a Zoom thing on it. So it was really
so
great.
we have that up. And if you haven't seen it being moved around on Facebook, then just send me an email and I'll send it out to all of you.
That's a really fascinating thing, what he was talking about, the trans-species field. Man, that was awesome.
Yes.
I hope we get to talk about that sometime. I hope, maybe next time we can do his book.
Yeah.
Well, that's also in Dogs Who Know When Their Owners Are Coming Home, Rupert Sheldrake's work about morphic fields.
Exactly. Yes. And the thing is, what he has done is give it a name to something. And when we have a name, it's really helpful because it seems like it gives it more power.
Yeah.
And coming to that place of compassion, expressing and really committing to come from a place of compassion, which is a Buddhist concept, which should be a concept which we all can make a difference by coming from that place in our own lives. So we were thinking, we could do that. I'd kind of like to wait until he gets his book out, maybe about the compassionate dog person. He's going to do the same thing for dogs, because not everybody's into horses. And so it's a very horse-oriented book.
Well, if you would be open and if he would be open, wouldn't it be interesting to bring him, see if he would be willing to?
Of course he will.
I know. I know.
Of course he will.
I'm always the eternal optimist.
No, but he will.
He would.
Yeah.
No, he's very committed to making a difference on the planet.
Yes.
So we could bring him in and have that discussion.
Would you be all open to that?
Oh, yeah.
We could.
So we would do it from, although this is a book on horses, I would orient the discussion, which he would be in total agreement with, of course, to the interspecies connection.
All of us, yeah.
And all of us. And bring in, I'd like to, have any of you read Talking with Nature by Michael Rhodes? And he's the first author really that was out there with Talking with Nature, because he's been doing this interspecies connection with nature since the 80s.
We have some choices.
Right.
So
You can let us know.
Yeah.
Just let us know.
Well, let's put it this way: the book that I was thinking about, and I'd like to just take a little vote here. We could do one and then the other, but the book that I had in mind was. I'm running down my list. I've got this list of books here on my iPad. I just have to. Just a second. It's about cells.
Oh.
And so I'm, of course, it'd be really fun to do it on the Compassion Equestrian, because having that discussion with Dr. Alan Schoen would be really fun.
Yeah.
Because I've known him for many, many years, and we've worked together.
And as you could tell from the video from our discussion with him yesterday, or the other day, he wasn't talking to us about only horses. So if you're not, an equestrian, it's fine.
We wouldn't do. I wouldn't do it about horses. I would use the book and refer a little because we might get a lot of horses. I'd like to talk about the concepts and how it affects the world. That's his reason for writing the book, and it's my reason. So the question is, do we do cell level healing, the bridge from soul to cell, by Joyce Whitley Hess? That's the one possibility. Or do we do the compassionate equestrian from the place of seeing how compassion for all species is different to do?
Yeah, that one.
That one.
Yeah.
Put your thumbs up if you like that concept.
Alan. We want Alan.
He'll be thrilled. You would
And
love.
Linda, he has that in his horse book. He has 25 compassionate principles applied to horses. So we could have him talk to us, or we could talk about the 25 principles applied to companion animals as well.
Exactly.
Because he's writing that book right now. We might give him some brilliant idea.
And Sally, he's focusing on text. He talks from the whole perspective, the whole level of communication. So I really don't want anyone to think he's going to hone it specifically just to the animals or just to the horses. His way of discussing it was so large and so intricately and divinely connected. I would like everybody to keep that, hold that, for what he'll bring to us.
There's a thumb up.
Thumb up. Thumb up. Okay, we're sending that an email.
Okay. Now, dates.
We'll go over the dates because if he wants to do it and can do it, then we need to go to dates with him and then
Right.
Okay.
So it'll be somewhere in either in the middle of the third week in March, or between the third and fourth week of March.
And the reason we keep moving it around, people from Germany, people from Australia, we're trying. Okay.
I mean, the thing is, I don't know how they
right.
The reason
Always
is
watch
it's just really hard to.
Okay, good.
We tried it on a Saturday, and
this is the first time I've gotten to make this. It's been great. So, whatever you guys do, I'll call out sick.
How is 5 o'clock like for
that's
on the
Pacific time, isn't it?
Yeah, Pacific.
That's Pacific 5.
Yeah.
8 o'clock at night works for me. I don't know.
Was this helpful?
In Michelle's East Coast.
For me, it was. For the East Coast, it was. I don't know where everybody else is from.
Well, so
Later's better.
Is 6, 7, or 8?
We have so many East Coast people on. Where are the people from the Midwest and California?
Working.
Working. It's Fat Tuesday.
Oh, they're celebrating.
It's Fat Tuesday, people. Mardi Gras.
So that's okay. So sometimes we make it so that it's more amenable one way and the other way, and then people can come back and we'll send the link out and we'll put the link.
How would it be if we did it 6, 7 at 9 o'clock your time? Would that still work for you? Or is it too late? Because that would be 6, 7, 8.
On the East Coast?
That's good.
Yeah.
8 o'clock East, 6, 7, 8 o'clock East Coast time.
Okay, we'll look at
work, but that didn't work for you.
At dinner. I know
it doesn't work.
Oh, jeez.
I like to make dinner for my husband.
But you know what? He's going to have to be an hour late. Prepare it ahead of time.
Hour later, hour early.
Celebrate. Go out and celebrate. Okay. It was great. Thank you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
everybody.
Goodbye.
Send me
Eleanor?
Yeah.
I think that thing you were saying that Moshe had said about the one mind idea, I think it's in the Brain's Way of Healing book in the chapter about Feldenkrais, which I know Linda has, so you can look in there. I'm pretty sure he says something like that in there.
Okay. I just happened to look over and see the book over there, and he did go back and forth between mind and soul.
Mosher did?
Yes, he did.
Back in the day?
Back in the day.
Oh,
He was talking about this stuff.
You have to know he was Hasidic. He comes from Hasidic background. It's a,
Right.
it's a good one.
And you have to understand, for those of you who, I think you all know Elinor, but I consider, the female Einstein, and it's really a hardship for me that I'm not born Jewish because he's so brilliant.
Oh.
I'll get a little verklempt.
What?
Verklempt.
Getting verklempt here. Stop already.
All right. Good night, y'all.
Good night.
Bye.
Bye, guys.
Bye.
Thank you.